Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is you're watching this video. Thank you once again for clicking on the PenBoyRoy Fountain Pen Review channel. The subject of today's video is the Diplomat Magnum Fountain Pen. I've gone over the history of Diplomat in the past, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown. But if you want more detailed information, check out my Diplomat Aero review. The link will be in the script below. Diplomat has been producing pens since the year 1922, but it wasn't until the 1950s that they woke up, gathered their senses, and started to make fountain pens. They chose the perfect time, too, because it was at about this time that the ballpoint pen made its insidious appearance into humanity, resulting in the destruction of all things good and wonderful, with fountain pen companies around the world suffering steep drops in sales and even closing down. It was a sad time in the history of human development. The Diplomat brand survived this terrible period in history, as they themselves made ballpoint pens and ballpoint pen refills. As time went on, the brand ownership, location, and distribution changed hands several times. This year, Diplomat's distribution responsibility landed in the lap of the Jaffa Corporation, one of the largest distributors of fountain pens and inks in the world. This resulted in the expanded availability of the Diplomat brand pens, including our little buddy, the Diplomat Magnum Soft Touch fountain pen. Why is it called the Soft Touch? Well, because it feels soft. Why is it called Magnum? Being that the word magnum is defined as something that is larger than normal relative to others of the same type. Well, research, phone calls, and poking around on my end revealed that no one has any idea. As a matter of fact, the current owners of Diplomat looked through their records as far back as they could, which is 1995, and they couldn't find an answer. No one from before the year 1995 still works there. I guess we'll never know. Oh well, who knows? Maybe the original designer tasked with giving the pen a name wanted to be able to say he had something Magnum in his pocket and not have to lie about it. And if that's the case, that dude, where he's still working at Diplomat, would never admit it. That's all I have for the background information. Moving on to the neutral zone. Those elements about the pen that are neither good or bad, or can be good or bad, depending on you. The nib is a number 5 stainless steel Jowo nib, branded Diplomat Magnum, with an F underneath that indicating the nib size. This one is a fine. It is a matte finish nib matching the rest of the pen's finish. The feed is a block Pez candy-shaped looking feed made of plastic and lacks the typical fins found on traditional fountain pen feeds. The nib and feed are removable using a grip and are not part of an unscrewable nib unit. The grip section is a plastic matte finish section bearing a bulged shape, with 3 flat edges placed there with the intention of assisting a newer user in gripping the pen. There is an injection molded gray plastic matte textured collar at the tip of the grip that enables the cap to snap and lock into place. At the back end of the grip section is a small step that meets the pen's body when fully assembled. The grip threads are part of the same mold that the grip section is from, showing the relief marks within the threads. These screw into the body's thread assembly, which is actually a separate black plastic piece embedded into the body of the pen. There are open ink windows on opposite ends of the pen body, enabling you to see how much ink is left in the pen, whether you choose to use a cartridge or a converter. The rest of the body tapers with 3 flat sides around it. This appears to be aesthetic as opposed to function, like in the grip section. At the bottom, we have a hollowed out circular design. This end of the pen is not sealed off. So, in case you haven't already figured it out, this pen is not eyedroppable due to the open ink windows, and if that didn't stop you, the unsealed end of the pen definitely should. And if that doesn't stop you, then put the pen down and wear a helmet at all times. The cap is the same texture and resin as the rest of the pen, with a cylindrical shape. The flat sides seen in the body are left out. The finial is a clear, slightly rounded piece of plastic that reads Product of Germany along the side and Diplomat smack dab in the middle. The finial sits in a hockey puck looking black chimney that rotates relatively easily. This sits in a matte textured chrome colored collar that is fixed to the cap body. The clip is a tension fixed clip that inserts into a cutout between the chrome colored collar and the cap's body and is fixed to the underside of the cap. The length of the clip is impressed with block letters that read Diplomat and has Germany engraved in the bend of the clip. The end of the clip turns up at the end to make sliding into clothing less of a hassle. The pen was packaged in a cheap piece of white cardboard with labels on it. One of them reads, "Empty box." Well, that's not good. Fortunately, the box is not empty. as sliding the sleeve off reveals a generic rounded squared tube that holds your pen suspended in a plastic cuff in the middle of the plastic coffin. Open that up, you have your included ink cartridge, and depending on the retailer, an included converter. That's all I have for the neutral zone. Moving on to the good. Those elements about the pen that are good. After using this pen for some time, I find that I really like how it writes. It is a very smooth and well-tuned nib. It has a slight feel of feedback, but has a more rounded feel and not a pointed feel despite it being a fine. At the same time, it has a line width that is compensatory to a standard Eurofine nib. It's not toothy and feels a touch softer than your typical Jowo nib. I also find that the light-weightedness of this pen exposes your fingers to a very subtle and super minor added feel of friction that occurs when the nib drags across the paper as you write. This is because the pen being as light as it is, the body doesn't do much in terms of acting as a vibration absorber. Imagine for a second a tuning fork vibrating at 440 vibrations per second, emitting a concert A natural feels like between your fingers, compared to what the same tuning fork, only this time with a rubber grip acting as a vibration absorber, feels like between your fingers. In the same way, I feel our Magnum, being a very light pen, is the same as your imaginary tuning fork without the grip. You feel the friction of the nib against the paper, in its truest and rawest form, the same way in your imaginary world of excessive tuning fork ownership, you feel the true and raw vibrations of the tuning fork without the rubber grip acting as a vibration absorber. It's not at all unpleasant, nor is it a bad thing. It is, however, noticeable, even though it's very subtle. I really find this to be enjoyable because it gives the nib a unique character and quality. The ink flow is consistent and leans a very tiny touch towards wet, giving inks with shading or sheening qualities their time to shine, while at the same time maintaining a line width that is a Eurofine. When it comes to the balance of this pen, it is comfortable whether it is posted or unposted. And like I said, this pen is light, so there's virtually no difference whether you have it posted or not. I like the feel of the pen in the hand. The texture is soft. I'm not talking soft like silly putty, but more so in how the matte finish feels smooth and consistent. It's certainly a good everyday pen that represents your fountain pen virus infection in a minimalist, yet stylish, trendy, and modern way. When it comes to the aesthetic of this pen, I find that I enjoy the consistency of the matte finish present uniformly throughout the entire pen, including the nib. Not only does the pen have a look that is appealing, but at the same time, tells me that there is attention and care given to every design element of this pen, despite it being a cheaper pen that doesn't cost all that much. Speaking of cost, moving on to the bad. Let's talk coin. This pen has an MSRP of $25. With online retailers, you can score this pen for $20. Not a bad price at all. My gripe, yet again, the distribution of this pen is done so without an included converter. That drives me nuts. I'm sure that there are people out there that don't care to use converters, and there are others that do. So, at the time of this recording, if the converter being included with the pen is important to you, Goulet Pens seems to be the only retailer I've found that includes a converter, taken from their own stock, for the sake of nutty people like me. And as per Brian, this is something that they have been doing and plan to continue to do. But other than the lack of a converter inclusion with the pen, I don't think that for $20, there is much to bitch about, especially being that Goulet Pens resolve that issue at their own cost and not yours, in the same way Tom at Goldspot did with the Parker Jotters and the Online Switch Plus. So my hat goes off to both of those dudes. That's all I have for the bad. Moving on to the ugly. Those elements about the pen that should not be, but are. When it comes to quality control, there is nothing I could find in regard to the ugly. I even bought two of these, one from Goldspot and the other from Goulet Pens. Both were the same, which is a good thing for sure. There was a minor issue that I picked up though. That was in the nib and grip alignment. Like I said in the neutral zone, this nib and feed are removable using a grip or even just your fingers. I also said that the grip has 3 flat sides to help with the grip of the pen. But in looking at the two pens side by side, the alignment of the nib to the triangular sides of the grip were slightly different. Different enough for it to alter how the pen is gripped, and the angle with which one writes. Luckily, as I said, the nib and feed are removable, and you can easily fix this by rotating the nib and feed to the desired position. That's easy enough for me, but what about the newer user? Will they have any idea that they can do this, or even have the will to do this in the face of the fear of screwing up their pen? Probably not. Maybe they just live with it, and hopefully it turns out okay for them. Maybe this was a fluke in the case of mine. In any case, it's one of those things that are not a huge deal, but worth mentioning. That's all I have for the ugly. It's high noon. Decision-making time. Should you or should you not pull the trigger on the Diplomat Magnum fountain pen? I really appreciate this pen in both the writing experience and the design. I for sure think that this pen is a sleeper, particularly in the arena for the newly fountain pen virus infected user, and even more so in the infecting of others not yet infected with the fountain pen virus. And for those purposes, for sure, pull the trigger on this pen. For those of you deep in the hobby having already attained pens from hundreds of dollars and up, for 20 bucks, why not? That was my review on the Diplomat Magnum. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you guys once again for watching and for all the love and support. Love you guys. Be well, be safe.